All right, welcome everyone. I call to order the Yamhill County Board of Commissioners formal session for January 25th, 2024. It is 10 o'clock in the morning, and I will go ahead and lead us all in the flag salute.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, item C is our calendar session. Anything to add to the calendar?
No, Chair.
Nothing.
The only thing I was going to follow up on was the work session calendaring discussion.
Yes.
Work session calendar discussion. Does that next week work?
What I'd like to recommend, because in light of, we have a very busy agenda today, that if it's okay with the board, we'll just schedule that for a work session topic for next Thursday.
Okay.
And that way we can talk about the boards. We're gonna have a work session to talk about work
Talk
sessions.
about work sessions.
So.
That's very government of you.
No problem.
All right. Okay, so we'll put that on for next week. Anything else to add?
No.
All right, item D is public comment. This time period is reserved for public comment on any topic other than an agenda item, a quasi judicial land use matter, or a topic scheduled for a public hearing today. I do have one general public comment that came forward. I believe it's Matt Bunn. Welcome, Matt.
Thank you.
You could just state your name and address for the record. We'd appreciate it.
My name's Matt Bunn and my address is 715 Ella Court, Newburgh, Oregon, 97132.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Matt Bunn and I'm the Director of Operations at the Newburgh Emergency Shelter, which operates under Community Wellness Collective. And I just wanted to come in today to thank Commissioner Starrett for your advocacy in sheltering in Newburgh. We really appreciate it. And thank you to the entire Board of Commissioners for your funding through your behavioral health housing grant that allowed us to stay open 24 hours a day for the 6 days of inclement weather. I just want to say thank you to everybody.
Thank
Great.
you, Matt.
Thank you. It was nice to meet you both at Provoking Hope Dinner as well.
Yeah. And thank you for what you do up there.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, any other general public comment on anything that's not on the agenda specifically or part of the public hearings? And if you are online, please raise your virtual hand.
Chair, I do have public comment.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we have everybody has a chance to go. So we did receive quite a bit of written public comment that was submitted for the record. Dealing directly with Commissioner Starrett and YCAP. Do you want to review the public comment?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I wanted to bring the board up to speed on a couple of things related to the YCAP position on the board in this past week. I received an email from the Community Wellness Collective that is are those that are sponsoring the Northside Shelter in Newburgh. And it CC'd the mayor of Newburgh, city manager, talking about the fact that they had some concerns about they were the only open shelter in Newburgh during the ice storm. And in it, there was a screenshot of the YCAP Facebook post that said, due to inclement weather, these variety of services would be closed. Stay safe and warm. That was CC'd to me and the mayor of Newburgh and one other commissioner, Commission Chair Bershauer, I believe. I then reached out to the executive director of YCAP, Alexandra Ball, and I asked her a little bit about what was going on in terms of what services were open. And I was told pretty much that the food bank staff was not able to get to, for instance, youth outreach. Youth outreach probably wouldn't have a lot of people there as a result of the schools being closed. and that the other services were curtailed because of staffing travel issues. I then reached out knowing that we had a board meeting, a YCAP board meeting on Tuesday. And I had mentioned to the Newburgh mayor that we were having a board meeting on Tuesday and a shelter tour of the YCAP shelter tour, which is not open yet. And I said, would you like to come? We're going to be touring it. I then asked them if they'd come to the board meeting on Tuesday and share with the YCAP board what the concerns were about sheltering operations in Newburgh during the inclement weather. I sent an email to the executive director of YCAP and I said, Newburgh City Manager and City Councilor Robin Wheatley and the mayor would like to visit the board to discuss ADP, Any Door Place Newburgh, which is the unopened shelter, and CWC, Community Wellness Collective plans. I've invited them to join us at the shelter tour as well. I received an email response that said, the board meeting is not a public meeting and its purpose is for board business. The agenda is set at this time and the board has not put these individuals on the agenda. The tour on Tuesday is only for board members. At this time, we are not inviting additional attendees. I'm getting to a point, so it will require the board to have some information and input, but I wanted to give some of the backstory. The next email I got was saying that basically that these individuals were not going to be welcome at the tour or the board meeting. And then I said, thank you. In the interest of hearing the challenges facing Newburgh sheltering operations, especially in light of the recent weather situation, I think it would be informative and entirely appropriate to hear from our city partners at the upcoming board meeting. Efforts to limit input during a comment period does not speak to the quote, transparency, collaboration, engagement, or culture of teamwork outlined in the board's approved mission statement. I was asked today for a timely meeting with the board. I extended the invitation and they accepted. In lieu of my community update, I will cede my time to Mayor Rossacker, and this will bring the board up to speed on their concerns. It is important for the city to visit the shelter, and it will be helpful for the board to visit with them. There is no compelling reason to exclude the mayor, the city manager from sharing this time at the shelter. Since YCAP is the recipient of a variety of government taxpayer funds, unless there is an executive session called, board meetings should allow for the maximum transparency and community input, especially from city elected and staff. I received a response saying from the board chair, Carrie Zimbrick, we will need to withdraw the invite. I can do that if someone will send me the contact information. Each person, for each person invited to our board business meeting. We can discuss the appropriate time for meeting with this group in the very near future. I said, thank you for the discussion, but in the interest of facilitating open and transparent communication with the YCAP board, I offered community providers and elected officials a timely opportunity to share their concerns about critical food, shelter, and case management services. I then was told that the invitation would need to be withdrawn. Then went to the shelter tour, and Police Chief Kosmicki was there. He has some concerns about some of the issues that they're experiencing related to the homeless population, and he was there as well. I then went to the board meeting, and there was an email that was sent out requesting an emergency executive meeting for the board meeting, for the YCAP board members. And the executive meeting was to address my invitation of Newburgh mayor, city councilor, and city manager to the meeting. And they called the executive session, and we had a meeting. And the executive board called me in and asked me for my resignation. I declined, and they went on and said that they would vote to remove me. And they said, and they voted with the exception of Pastor David Case, who voted not to remove me from the board, voted to remove me, and the charge was abuse of power. So at this point, I am no longer the Yamhill County liaison to YCAP. If you look at the old the bylaws that we received, 1/3 of the minimum 12 members should be elected officials. One of those should be held by a county commissioner. So since I am no longer the liaison, the next action would have to be, I would imagine, a collaboration with YCAP and the Board of Commissioners to make a determination on what that replacement position would look like. So I just wanted to bring you up to speed on the fact that I am no longer the liaison to YCAP. It is part of the HHS liaison duties, including Housing Authority, Northwest Seniors and Disability Services. But at this point, that position is vacant. So just so that I could share that information with you in a public forum. I know we're not allowed to be sharing information back and forth, and this was really the only vehicle to do that. So I have the information is in the public record.
Thank you, Commissioner. I am definitely having a what in the heck is going on moment, but I want to hear from the mayor of Newburgh first. He is asking to provide public comment, and then I'll have some feedback. Welcome, Mayor.
Thank you for your advocacy for the cities in the county, in Youngstown County. We appreciate this board and everything that you do. I have been mayor for about a year. I have had exactly 3 meetings with Alexandra. And in those meetings, we have always expressed some form of, we would appreciate better communication. And in those meetings, that promise has always returned that, yes, we will communicate with you better. The truth is, they do not communicate with the city of Newburgh at all. All of the communications with YCAP are one-way communications from us, generally through Luverne and Councilor Robin Wheatley. The city manager, I'm sorry, YCAP is the only state-sponsored shelter provider. And they have not provided a shelter in Newburgh since last June. They have not funded a shelter in Newburgh since last June. They have left it up to CWC, the Community Wellness Collective. Now, in full disclosure, in the interest of full disclosure, I now work for the Community Wellness Collective as a jobs coordinator. That's not why I'm here. I'm here as the city of Newburgh today. We desired better communication. YCAP gets over $10 million from the federal government to provide services to the homeless people in our county, including the city of Newburgh. And in the city of Newburgh, we are very interested in making sure that homeless people have a proper place to rest and to live. And we are very sure that because of the shelters that exist, we don't have people living on the streets, as some other counties or some other towns, of course, do. It is important to us and our citizens to make sure that we do not have homeless people living in our parks and on our streets. It's not good for them. It's not good for the community. So we have a vested interest in having open communication with the sole supplier of that service. And we have requested several times to have these talks. A week ago, during the cold weather incident, I was at the drop-in center of Newburgh, which on the form form provided by YCAP was the only warming center, and it's open for 2 hours a day between 10 and 12. Other than that, the youth outreach center has full day hours, and they were to be open. Unfortunately, YCAP sent out another letter saying that they closed all their facilities. They had just boom, closed. They didn't call the city. They didn't call the city manager. They didn't call me. Fortunately, the Community Wellness Collective was able to step up and open the shelter, or excuse me, the drop-in center on First Street in Newburgh, which is a private center and not funded by YCAP. They have no funds for this purpose, but they understood that in the life-threatening cold that we had that weekend, people needed to be safe. So they provided that service. I had the opportunity to talk with Commissioner Starrett about that incident, and that, I think, is why she invited me to go talk to YCAP's board. We had, the city sat down, the chief of police, the city manager, Councilor Wheatley, and I sat down together to formulate what we wanted to say to the board. And basically, we wanted to say we desired better communication. We want to know where you're hoteling people in our town. We want to know how many people you're hoteling in our town. But we don't get the opportunity to say this. So when Commissioner Starrett heard that, asked me to come to the meeting, I was ecstatic. It was giving me the opportunity to talk to the board and not their executive director, who I have not had any success with. The rest, Commissioner Starrett outlined very well. Things I didn't know, things I did know. What I do know is that YCAP gets $10 million of federal funds for the purpose of taking care of the homeless people. The city of Newburgh desires more open communication. The executive director of YCAP is not interested in hearing what the city of Newburgh cares. So I really wanted the opportunity to express this to the board so they could hear from city government what our issue was. That's it, simple. But unfortunately, the executive director made sure that it was not possible for the city of Newburgh to talk to their board. I would ask you, the commission, to help us, the city of Newburgh, elevate this to the next level. I don't know who writes the grants. I don't know who controls the grants, but they need to understand that the people that they are giving millions of dollars to are not working with the community. On the 2022 IRS Form 990, their stated purpose to the federal government is to advocate for people in need by providing access to resources and tools to strengthen communities. I would like that to actually be their goal of the entity that provides those services to Newburgh. We care about our homeless people. We care about all of our residents. They're no different. They deserve better treatment. Thank you very much.
Mayor, quick follow-up. So you attended the tour of the facility with the city administrator or city manager and Councilor Wheatley. And was the entire YCAP board there?
Chief of police was there. The YCAP, a number of.
Ron Noble was absent.
Mm,
Excuse me.
A number of board members were there.
Okay.
Some weren't. Yeah, Ron Noble wasn't there.
I'm not entirely sure the board makeup now. I used to serve on YCAP, but I think there's still some carryover of board members, but from memory, most of them are from Newburgh.
No.
So was there an opportunity to speak to the board members in the tour?
The executive director, as we walked in the door, presented us with a very carefully choreographed program of what we were allowed to do in the next hour, which was under her control. And she made it very clear that we had to be gone by 1 o'clock because there were caseworkers working in that building and they needed to be able to go back to work. Since I wasn't allowed to go to the board meeting, I hung around and in fact talked to Christopher. He's the one that told me that they have 28 people in motels in Newburgh at this point. Information I have been trying to get from YCAP for quite some time. They were gone by 1:37. They had no business there. They were not conducting business in that building that day. They left as soon as they weren't needed to prevent us from speaking to the board.
Okay, and Christopher's works there.
Christopher apparently is the outreach coordinator.
Okay.
I believe is his title.
Okay, any questions for the mayor? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor.
I want to make sure if there's any other public comment on this topic before we kind of start piecing this together. Okay. This is very confusing to try and understand because we received an invitation to tour on Tuesday, kind of last minute, but from Alexandra, saying that it was open to county commissioners and the Newburgh mayor and council.
That was in response to me saying that I was told that I would have to rescind the invitation to the mayor and the rest of the guests. And she said there would be a more appropriate time to set up a time to come and tour the shelter. And that is where, having requested that next move, that all of you be invited to the shelter, along with Representative Sharp, who's asked to see the shelter, and you know who else was on there, if they could receive an invitation subsequent to this, because no one was going to be at that one. And that is the email you got in response to my asking that you all be included in an invitation to the tour. The response was, those of you who are copied on this, the tour is tomorrow at 12. So I think that's what that email was.
Okay. So the tour happens. City representatives are there. Not a whole lot of questions are answered. Everybody's supposed to leave by 1. You then have your YCAP board meeting later in the day that city representatives did not attend. And they kick you off the board.
They called an executive session, an emergency executive session, asked me to resign. I declined, and then they voted. They needed a 2/3 majority of the full board, and they voted to remove me from the board.
So I guess I'm confused and mind you, this is not my liaison area, so maybe you have more detail than I do, but we give quite a bit of funding to YCAP and certainly an extensive partnership over the years. And it was also my understanding that it is a requirement of their bylaws or their charter to have a county commissioner specifically sitting on the board.
That is what the information I have from the YCAP board book I received that said that it is, the composition is to one of those 4 positions, elected officials be held by a county commissioner. I know that's always been the case. We've always had representation on YCAP. Kathy George prior to me, and then I've been on it for going on 10 or 9 years now.
Right, which makes sense considering the, as I said, the extensive partnership. So it's not clear to me what the game plan is. It seems as though this was a knee-jerk reaction to something. I'm confused as to why ADP Newburgh is not open. That was supposed to be open last year. In fact, we had discussions about the shelter being open after extensive remodel. And as far as I know, they have not opened or had any clients there.
I believe they had what they're calling a soft opening. Mayor, am I right? And but did not serve any clients. It was just open to satisfy. In other words, there was funding for the McMinnville shelter and navigation center that was not going to be utilized in time to satisfy the requirements of the grant. So they shifted to the Newburgh site, went through that, and was supposed to open in other words, by the end of 2023, opened up for a day or 2. And then, but how long?
They were open 3 days and they housed nobody.
Housed nobody. Okay, open 3 days, housed nobody. Satisfied that requirement. The question that we asked this past Tuesday was, when will it be open? And the estimation is sometime this spring. In the meantime, my concerns were, as you remember, we awarded HHS behavioral funds dollars to the collective, the CWC. And we basically said, we don't want 2 shelters operating. So if you can pretty much do what you need to do as a stopgap. But we're fully expecting YCAP shelter to be open. And then when that runs out, we're going to be going month to month. And I confirmed this with our director, Lindsay Manfin, that we'll go to month with invoices from the Community Wellness Collective. And we're not going to be doing an ongoing, you just get money forever to have 2 shelters in Newburgh. So they are being funded and invoicing us, and we're through June. So that's where that was. So my concern was if the YCAP shelter didn't open, I had asked Director Manfred, what do? We don't want there to be, okay, there's nowhere to go. And she assured me that we would pretty much cross that bridge when we came to it in terms of looking at options that we could continue to support them. I don't know. I don't know that there's a hard and fast date. It is a beautiful shelter. It is, it's like a model home. You know, you walk in and there's nobody there, but it is beautiful. And hopefully it will be serving folks in need soon.
Okay, so CWC is using Yamhill County money to operate the inclement, or at least operate during the inclement weather emergency that we had.
24/7. They have been
24/7.
operating the shelter at Northside Church. They have been basically ferrying people back and forth by van from the drop-in center, which is run by a church on First Street, and have been, I know they got a number of restaurants to donate food and to feed the folks during the bad weather, but that was open 24/7 during the bad weather.
Okay. I know that YCAP receives some state money for ADP Newburgh. Has the county directly contributed to that?
No, I believe that's OHCS funding.
Okay,
I'm not sure what the
Yes.
funding stream is,
Okay.
but the funding that we have from it.
The bulk of the funding came from Oregon Housing and Community Services with that particular grant for
Through
that
the grant.
project.
Correct. You will likely remember that at the same time that we awarded funds to the Community Wellness Collective, there were also 2 other organizations that were
Right.
awarded funds. One of them was YCAP, but the project that they submitted funds to request for was part of the turnkey project and not the Newburgh Center.
okay.
And that contract has yet to be finalized and brought to the board.
And turnkey, for those who are not familiar with that, is a motel that was purchased. It was owned at one point in partnership with Providence. Now YCAP is the owner, and that is where it's sort of long-term. So in other words, people will go there. It's there's a waiting list. It's for folks that would be appropriate to get into services and then ultimately move on to housing. So it's not like a drop-in emergency shelter. You have to be on a waiting list and you have to apply.
Okay. Do we know why, thank you, Director Manvern. Do we know why youth outreach was closed?
I was told that there would not be, that since the schools were closed, it was not likely that there would be kids out in bad weather.
Okay. I'm trying to understand. I mean, is this, and maybe you don't know this, but is your hunch that this is a staffing issue, or is this there's something else here?
Well, I mentioned to the YCAP executive director, that the volunteers were able to get to Northside and to serve the homeless population, and why wasn't their staff able to do the same? And she said that basically she will not ask her staff to, be driving or be showing up in inclement weather when it's not safe to do so. And that it might have been, if I understand correctly, an HR concern. In other words, you can't ask people to do something like this unless, and I would imagine it would have to be written into a contract, but had message to her staff that if it was not safe, that it was not safe to travel. So these would be closed. But to be clear, there is no emergency shelter run by YCAP in Newburgh at this time.
Right, but even with the 28 people or so that are in using motel vouchers, CWC was still fairly full during that period.
We're seeing probably 30 to 35 people a day.
One. Excuse me.
You're gonna have to come up so we can get you on record.
Their reasoning might have been solid for not opening the center. Had we have had communication, they could have called our city manager and told him that they didn't have people to open the center. And we would have supplied in some manner folks to run that. Now, the interesting thing that I heard from one of the young adults who I deal with, he's 19 years old, therefore he spends time at the Youth Outreach Center. According to him, and I have not verified this, the locks that on their doors are time locks. So they were able to open the knob and walk in and use the center, even though there was no adults, nobody
Supervision.
there from YCAP.
Okay,
Again, better communication.
right.
The city it wants to be a partner. They don't want the city to be a partner.
Thank you. So after reviewing the emails, I asked Director Bell and the YCAP board chair for an explanation as to how we got here and why they felt it was wise to kick a county commissioner off of their board. Some of these emails refer to that the director, Director Bell, is meant to be the one dealing with concerns at the lowest level, quote unquote, lowest level. And as far as I'm concerned, the city government and the police chief is the highest level of local government. And if you have an issue with them, you need to address it directly. And if that means your board needs to be brought in, that's what it means. This is now elevated to the county level. So I'm not sure that that was their intention, but it certainly seems to have backfired in the sense that we are now looking at this and paying attention because we give, as I said, a substantial amount of money and resources to support YCAP. And frankly, you know, I still don't understand how we got here. And it's a giant red flag to me that this would be the reaction in response to inviting transparency and open communication with a city level government. And I hope that they respond. I haven't seen anything released to us publicly about Commissioner Sterrett leaving the board. There's no explanation. So
I just want to, at least Yarnell, our president of our board, is on the phone right now. If you have any questions whatsoever about CWC, she'd be happy to answer them for you.
okay, thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure that we have further questions. I would like to hear from Director Bell and the board chair of YCAP. And I would like to know how they plan to rectify this problem that they now have no sitting county commissioner on their board. And it certainly calls into question some of the partnerships that we have with them. I'm just kind of baffled, to be honest with you. I don't understand why this decision was made. So if they follow up with me, I will bring that to the attention of the board. Is there anything further that you feel that we need to follow up on?
I can't even make a comment until I start seeing what the other side of this is, I guess, unless there was more communication that was given after Commissioner Sterrett was removed from the board, but there's a lot of information missing here.
Yeah, agree. Okay. Other than the follow-up, is there anything else you would suggest that we do?
Just to make the board aware of the fact that there is no commissioner liaison represented, and then that will require future discussion and consideration on your part.
Okay. Well, thank you for bringing it to our attention. Obviously, this is a big deal. And thank you, Mayor, for coming. Counselor Wheatley, we appreciate you letting us know that this is a concern and it's an ongoing concern. And CWC, we were watching some of your posts about the services you were providing during the weather, and very thankful for those services. And we will follow up when we start to have a clearer picture of what's happening here. Okay, is there any further public comment? And again, if you're online and you have a comment, please raise your virtual hand. All right, hearing none, we will move on to our department updates. There's nothing today. Item F is our work session. Nothing on the work session calendar. Item G is our consent agenda. I will move approval of consent. Just a quick comment. I really appreciated seeing the applications for these. It really helps us get to know who is applying and who is seeking to serve the county. And we thank them for doing so. So with that, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Great, thank you, and welcome Janet Redmond and Scott Miller to the Yamhill County Fair Board. Very important committee or board.
And good timing. There's a fair meeting tonight.
Yeah. All right, item H is old business. H1 is consideration of approval of amendment number 2 to agreement number 20-096 between Yamhill County Transit Area and First Transit, Inc., Board Order 20-96. Updating agreement terms retroactive to December 1st, 2023 through June 30th of 2024. This was continued from January 18th of 2024. And this was discussed and approved earlier this morning at our Transit Board of Directors meeting. I will move approval. Is there further comments?
No,
Discussion?
Yep, Madam Chair, if you could
Oh.
just condition this approval on the final review and approval of
Oh,
County
yes.
Council's office as we did with the transit meeting earlier. Thank you.
I will amend my motion to, for a motion to approve, subject to a review and approval by County Council. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Great, thank you. Motion passes. H2, consideration to authorize Yamhill County Health and Human Services to apply for American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA, funds in the amount of $214,457 from the Oregon Department of Developmental Disability Services. This was continued from January 18th of 2024. So I believe last week we talked about needing to have some more clarification on who the funds were going to and how they would be spent. Appreciate the follow-up, Director Manfred, on that. It looks like we have just over 600 individuals that we will be serving or can serve or are connected to, and roughly 74 homes and 16 facilities. And I agree that, if you're talking about generators and that kind of thing, it does make sense to create more of a hub. I don't know that would have worked so well in an ice storm, but it's something. And the take-home kits are great ideas to sort of help with that particular scenario. So are there any questions on the follow-up?
appreciate the detail.
I have a question. And it's going to be super quick. So you're allowed up to 10% admin costs. What do you anticipate the admin costs to be on this? Is there already pieces together to where it won't be the maxing out of $21,400 of the?
Yeah, I doubt that we would spend that much on admin costs. I think that it could be twofold. One, a limited amount of financial support to help with the staffing time, just in terms of if they're helping build the kits and working with people to do some training around, this is what goes into the kit, this is when you would use it and those types of things. So a minimal amount of time for stuff like that. I think the other piece could be some of that admin cost actually getting passed through to some of the larger facilities that are essentially creating these hubs and places where people can go. So I wouldn't anticipate using all of those funds for admin costs. And I certainly wouldn't think that all of them would be used internally. Some of that could be external as well.
Okay. Is this strictly like medical emergency preparedness?
So it is really for all sort of intensive purposes preparedness. And with that said, we are going to be prioritizing individuals that have high medical needs and are therefore more vulnerable in the instance of power outages and things like that. And we do keep lists and maintain those things locally so that we can provide outreach and support when those types of things do happen to make sure that they're safe and okay.
The reason I asked that question is, are we going to involve our own emergency management? Like, will Brian be involved in some of this, like the building of the kits? I'm just, so we don't reinvent a wheel. But the reason I asked if it's medical particular, then maybe he's not involved. But if it's more broad,
What we would intend to do is we do have resource through public health. We receive emergency preparedness funding from the state for that. We actually have had that position vacant for a while, but we do have a contractor who's supporting some of that work. And so I think utilizing them to make sure that what we're building in those kits seems appropriate is what we would intend to do. I don't imagine pulling emergency management and Brian into the actual work itself, although I do have a sort of a note to myself that should we get the funding, that I would be reaching out to him in terms of some questions and recommendations related to generators and things like that. That is out of really the scope of my knowledge.
Ask Commissioner Johnston. He knows.
Or maybe I'll just email you.
that's all I got. Thank you.
Well, PGE also has a high medical needs list or priority list, I guess. So if power does go out in the rural areas, they kind of go through and check through the medical needs first. At least theoretically, I haven't had a chance to follow up with the president on that, but
Just one
An
question.
extra
So
insurance.
will you be reaching out to Northwest Seniors Disability Services?
We work closely with them. These funds really are unique to the 600 plus individuals that we serve.
Oh, okay.
And then, of course, there are more individuals in our community that have intellectual and developmental disabilities that are served through brokerages. Brokerages are receiving their own funds from the state to do the same type of work for the people that they work with.
Got it. Thank you.
Thanks.
thank you. Okay, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Any further discussion?
None.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you. Item H3, consideration of approval of amendment number 5 to agreement number 180033 between Yamaha County and the Oregon Health Authority Board Order 23-260 for public health services, adding funding in the amount of $44,055 retroactive to November 1st of 2023 through June 30th of 2024. This was continued from January 18th of 2024 as well. And I believe we had some questions on the demand level of the COVID-19 vaccines specifically. Commissioners, did you receive that follow-up information?
Yes.
So in addition to the follow-up info, it seems that the funding isn't necessarily for the vaccine, it's for the staffing to be able to administer the vaccine. And that the state is still providing vaccine for uninsured individuals for free.
I had a couple of questions, Director Manfred. There have been, obviously for the last few years, we've had discussions about, my concern over the fact that we're continuing to promote an inoculation, which has been proven to be not only not effective, but not safe. I don't want to be in the position, and we know OHA doesn't allow us to pick and choose what we like in these contracts, but to support the promotion of something which ethically, I couldn't be part of that, to promote something which we now know is considerably not a safe product. So when we talk about we've received them, so we receive them from the state, we don't pay for them. In other words, they're providing those.
The vaccine itself,
They're
correct?
providing that. The promotion part, and you talk about the 3 community events, are we doing outreach to get those set up, or do they come to us and say, hey, we want you to do this for us?
The 3 events that I mentioned in the email are the only events I'm aware of that have occurred since October, although 2 of them have occurred. One is, I think, this Friday. In all 3 of those, the organizations, one was a church that we regularly every year do a flu clinic for, because they ask us every year to do that, and we're happy to do that. So they asked us to include the COVID booster. The other 2 was outreach from Unidos, who asked us to have a table and be available for vaccines for those who may want it at some of their events.
Okay, thank you. And just a clarification. So for people who are uninsured, because I know that was one of the considerations, for people who are uninsured, they don't have OHP or private, they can go, from what I can figure out, they can go, for instance, to a pharmacy who is also funded to provide this for those who might want it, who are uninsured. Did I get that right?
The majority of pharmacies are not receiving state supplied vaccine because largely they're catering to an insured population. I have not assessed to see if any of those local pharmacies are getting bridge funds. I do know there are some primary care providers that do accept some of the bridge funds and things like that, where they get support to provide these vaccines and or get the state supplied vaccines, which is how we reference the vaccines we get from the state that we don't have to purchase ourselves.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I'm understanding correctly, because last week you said that this funding, the particular bridge funding, was necessary to make sure that uninsured people have access to the COVID vaccine, but that's now not the case. It's for staff.
Yeah, I'm happy to provide some more clarification. So you're correct that we can get the vaccine for free. What is different about the COVID vaccine is that we're not allowed, and I believe it's a federal regulation that's passed through the state, we're not allowed to provide or charge any sort of administrative cost. There is an administrative fee that comes along with the majority of our vaccines, including the state supplied vaccines. The fee itself is set by the federal government. It's $21.96 per visit for a vaccine, which, to be honest, does not cover our costs, which is probably not surprising to you all. But we are able to recoup that, and that is helpful when we are talking about any sort of billing mechanism. Of course, with our uninsured population, usually what we do is we have a sliding scale. In this case, we are not even able to do that, because of that federal regulation. And so these funds are intended to help support us in those administrative costs, because we can't recoup them in any other way. I will say we have roughly 3 immunization different funds that come to us. Some of them you're familiar with, the PE43, which this is what it's built into. That's just general vaccine dollars, and it comes to support just the clinic work itself. We are when we do quarterly projections of all of our finances, and at the end of Q1, we're projecting to spend all of that down by Q2. We have 2 other resources that we're able to support vaccine funding with from the state.